The weight of responsibility. The morning sun had barely risen when Fiona Walsh was already on her third cup of coffee. At 24, the dark circles under her eyes made her look older, a testament to years of shouldering responsibilities that weren't meant for someone so young. Her small apartment in the outskirts of Portland was quiet, except for the gentle snoring coming from her grandmother's room and the occasional rustling from her 16-year-old sister Penny's bedroom. "Penny! It's 6:30! You'll be late for school again!" Fiona called out, simultaneously packing her sister's lunch while ironing her own uniform for her first job of the day at Riverbrook Hospital, where she worked as a receptionist from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. After dropping Penny at school, Fiona would head straight to the hospital, then rush to her evening job as a waitress at the Silver Spoon, an upscale restaurant that catered to Portland's elite. Between her grandmother's mounting medical bills and Penny's school expenses, every dollar counted. "Coming!" Penny emerged, hair still damp from her shower. "Did you sleep at all last night? You look terrible." Fiona forced a smile. "Thanks for the compliment." And yes, I did sleep. A bit. The truth was that she had spent most of the night researching cheaper medication alternatives for her grandmother's heart condition. The insurance covered only so much, and the recent price hike had thrown their already tight budget into chaos. By evening, Fiona's feet ached as she changed into her waitress uniform in the cramped staff bathroom of the Silver Spoon. The restaurant, with its crystal chandeliers and imported marble flooring, was a stark contrast to the cramped two-bedroom apartment she called home. "Table 7 requested you specifically," said Trent, the floor manager, his tone suggesting suspicion. "The guy's some tech hotshot. Don't mess this up. They spend big." Fiona nodded, tucking a stray strand of auburn hair behind her ear. She had no idea who at Table 7 would ask for her by name. As she approached, she noticed a group of men in expensive suits laughing over what appeared to be a business dinner. One man sat slightly apart from the group, his attention focused on his phone rather than the boisterous conversation. "Good evening, gentlemen. I'll be your server tonight. Can I start you with some drinks?" Fiona's practiced smile remained fixed, despite her exhaustion. "Well, well, if it isn't little Miss Sunshine from this morning," one of the men said, his voice carrying a hint of mockery. Fiona recognized him as the impatient man who had snapped at her at the hospital when she couldn't immediately locate his friend's admission records. "I believe we'll start with your finest scotch," another added, barely looking at her. "And make it quick. Some of us have important meetings tomorrow." The quiet man finally looked up from his phone, and Fiona felt herself freeze under his gaze. Unlike the others, his eyes held no contempt, just a quiet intensity that somehow made her more uncomfortable than the others' obvious disdain. "Dominic Vega." He introduced himself with a slight nod. "And you are?" "Fiona," she replied, surprised by the simple courtesy. "Fiona will be taking care of us tonight," Dominic told the group, his tone carrying an unexpected note of authority that silenced the others momentarily. As she walked away to fetch their drinks, Fiona could feel his eyes following her. Not in the way she was accustomed to from wealthy men who frequented the restaurant, but with something that felt unsettlingly, like genuine interest. Little did Fiona know that this encounter would mark the beginning of a profound change in her life. For Dominic Vega was not just another wealthy businessman looking for entertainment. Behind his reserved exterior lay a story of his own, one that would soon intertwine with hers in ways neither of them could imagine. That night, as Dominic observed Fiona's quiet dignity amid his colleagues' casual disrespect, something stirred within him, a recognition, perhaps, of a strength he had once needed himself. And when one of his associates deliberately spilled a drink and blamed her, the decision he made would set in motion events that would challenge everything Fiona believed about wealth, kindness, and the walls she had built around her heart. Unexpected defender. The wine glass toppled with deliberate clumsiness, its burgundy contents spreading across the pristine white tablecloth and splashing onto Fiona's uniform. She bit her lip, feeling the cold liquid seep through the fabric against her skin. "Oh, how careless of you," sneered the man who had recognized her from the hospital. James Sullivan, she now recalled from his patient visitor badge. His smirk made it clear this was no accident. "I hope the management doesn't dock your pay for ruining such an expensive tablecloth." Fiona's hands trembled slightly as she reached for her serving cloth. This uniform was her only one, and the dry cleaning would cut into her grocery budget for the week. Still, she maintained her composure. "I'll get this cleaned up right away, sir. And perhaps you could be more attentive," James continued, enjoying the audience of his colleagues. "People in service positions these days just don't seem to understand the value of—" "Enough, James." Dominic's voice cut through the table's atmosphere like a blade. It wasn't loud, but carried a quiet authority that silenced everyone immediately. "The only carelessness here is yours, and it was clearly intentional." James's expression faltered. "Come on, Dominic. It was just a bit of fun." Humiliating someone trying to do their job isn't fun. Dominic stood up, removing his tailored jacket. To Fiona's astonishment, he handed it to her. "Please use this to cover up. I'll speak with the manager about getting you a replacement uniform." The table fell into uncomfortable silence as Dominic pulled out his wallet and placed several $100 bills on the table. "This should cover the meal and any damages. Gentlemen, I believe our business discussion is concluded for tonight." As the other men awkwardly gathered their belongings, Dominic turned to Fiona. "I apologize for my colleague's behavior. Is there somewhere we can talk briefly?" 20 minutes later, after changing into her street clothes with Dominic's jacket, still wrapped protectively around her shoulders, Fiona found herself sitting across from him in a quiet corner of the restaurant's bar area. The manager had been surprisingly accommodating after Dominic had spoken with him privately. "You didn't have to do that," Fiona said, finally breaking the silence. "I'm used to handling difficult customers." "That doesn't make it acceptable," Dominic replied, his fingers lightly tracing the rim of his untouched water glass. Up close, she noticed the fine lines around his eyes that suggested he was in his mid-30s, and something in those eyes that spoke of experiences beyond the privilege his expensive watch and custom suit implied. "Why would you risk antagonizing your business partners for a waitress?" The question came out more bluntly than she intended, but the evening had stripped away her customer service veneer. Dominic's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "First, they're not partners, just potential investors who clearly lack basic human decency. Second," he paused, studying her face, "I recognized you from the hospital this morning. You were kind to an elderly woman who was confused about her medication while simultaneously dealing with James's friend who was being unreasonable about visiting hours." Fiona felt an unexpected warmth in her cheeks. "I was just doing my job." With patience and dignity that deserved better than what happened tonight. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a business card, sliding it across the table. "Vega Technologies. I'm the founder and CEO." Fiona reluctantly took the card. "I'm not looking for charity, Mr. Vega." "Dominic," he corrected gently. "And I'm not offering charity. What I am offering is an opportunity. We're expanding our administrative team, and I need someone who can maintain composure under pressure while handling multiple responsibilities. Based on what I've observed, you seem exceptionally qualified." Fiona narrowed her eyes, suspicion replacing her initial gratitude. "You don't know anything about my qualifications. I know you work two demanding jobs with grace and efficiency. I know you prioritize others' needs even when treated unfairly. Those are qualities I value more than whatever technical skills might be on a resume." He stood up, leaving his card on the table. "The starting salary is twice what you'd make at both your current jobs combined, with flexible hours and full benefits. Think about it." Before she could formulate a response, he added, "And to be clear, this isn't about what happened tonight. I was already considering approaching you after seeing how you handled the situation at the hospital. After Dominic left, Fiona sat alone, turning his card over in her hands. The offer seemed too good to be true, which, in her experience, meant it probably was. Men like Dominic Vega didn't just offer life-changing opportunities to women like her without expecting something in return. Yet something about his direct gaze and the way he had stood up for her without hesitation made her wonder if perhaps she was being unfair in her judgment. With Penny's college applications looming and her grandmother's condition worsening, could she afford to dismiss this chance based on pride and preconception? That night, as she hung her wine-stained uniform to soak in the bathroom sink, Fiona found herself staring at Dominic's business card on her kitchen counter. Outside her window, the city lights blurred through the gentle rain that had begun to fall, mirroring the uncertainty clouding her thoughts. Her phone buzzed with a text from the hospital pharmacy. Her grandmother's medication costs had increased. Again. Taking a deep breath, Fiona picked up the business card and entered the number into her phone. She wouldn't call yet, but she wouldn't throw the opportunity away either. Sometimes, she reflected, help came from the most unexpected sources. And sometimes, the hardest part of survival was learning when to accept it. Bridges built, slowly. 2 weeks into her new position at Vega Technologies, Fiona still felt like an imposter walking through the sleek glass doors of the downtown office building. The security guard, Ramon, greeted her by name now, and she'd memorized the faces of the core team members, but the transition from her previous jobs to executive assistant to Dominic Vega remained surreal. "Morning, Fiona. There's fresh coffee in the break room," called Josephine, the HR director, as Fiona made her way to her desk, positioned just outside Dominic's office. "And Dominic asked if you could join the 9:30 meeting with the development team. He wants your perspective." Fiona nodded, arranging Dominic's schedule on her tablet while simultaneously checking emails. The work was demanding but engaging, a welcome change from the physical exhaustion of her previous jobs. More surprising was how Dominic actually valued her input, often asking her opinion on matters she wouldn't have expected. "I've never had an assistant who organizes information so efficiently," he had told her after her first week. "You have a gift for cutting through noise to find what matters." The salary was as promised, more than enough to cover her grandmother's medications with room to breathe financially for the first time in years. Yet Fiona maintained her guard, waiting for the other shoe to drop, for some hint that Dominic's motives weren't as straightforward as they seemed. That morning, as she organized documents for the upcoming meeting, Dominic emerged from his office, dressed impeccably as always in a charcoal suit that contrasted with the more casual attire of most tech executives. "Fiona, do you have a moment?" he asked, his expression unreadable. She followed him into his office, notepad ready. Instead of sitting behind his desk, he gestured to the small seating area by the window overlooking the city. "I've been meaning to ask," he began, once they were seated. "How is your family adjusting to your new schedule?" The personal question caught her off guard. "They're adapting. My sister appreciates that I can help with her homework in the evenings now, and my grandmother—" She hesitated, unsure how much to share. "Your grandmother is ill, correct?" His tone held genuine concern. Fiona nodded cautiously. "Heart condition. The new insurance coverage is making a significant difference in her treatment options." "I'm glad to hear it." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I noticed you haven't used any of your personal days yet, despite working here for 2 weeks. "I'm still on probation," she replied, the defensive note in her voice automatic. "That's not how we operate here. If you need time for family obligations, take it. The work will wait." He leaned forward slightly. "Fiona, I didn't hire you out of pity or some misplaced sense of gallantry. I hired you because this company needs someone with your skills and perspective." "My perspective as what? A charity case?" The words escaped before she could stop them. Instead of taking offense, Dominic's expression softened. No. As someone who understands what it means to fight for what matters. He stood and walked to his desk, returning with a framed photo she hadn't noticed before. In it, a younger Dominic stood beside an elderly woman with his same intense eyes, both dressed simply in front of a modest home. My grandmother raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 12, he explained, handing her the photo. She cleaned houses for wealthy families to put me through school, worked herself to exhaustion. His voice grew quieter. She passed away during my final year of college, before I could make things easier for her. Fiona studied the photo, seeing Dominic in a new light. I'm sorry. I built this company from nothing because she believed I could. But I've found success doesn't mean much without people who remind you where you came from. He reclaimed the photo gently. Your determination reminds me of her. The vulnerability in his admission created a small crack in the wall Fiona had built between them. My grandmother was a teacher before her health declined, she offered. She still tutors Penny, my sister, even on her bad days. Dominic smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. I'd like to meet them someday, if that wouldn't be overstepping. The 9:30 meeting came and went, with Fiona contributing more than she had anticipated to the discussion about user interface accessibility. Afterward, as the development team filed out, Dominic asked her to stay behind. There's a foundation gala this weekend, he said, straightening papers on the conference table. Normally I'd avoid these things, but we're launching a scholarship program for first-generation college students. Would you consider attending? Not as my assistant, he added quickly, but as my colleague. Your insight would be valuable. Fiona hesitated, feeling the boundaries of their professional relationship shifting. I don't exactly have gala-appropriate attire. The company can cover that as a business expense, he replied. Then seeing her expression added, or consider it an advance on your end-of-quarter bonus, which you're already on track to earn. Later that evening, as Fiona helped Penny with her calculus homework, her sister noticed her distraction. Earth to Fiona, Penny waved her hand. You've been staring at the same equation for 5 minutes? Sorry, Fiona murmured. Just thinking about work. You mean thinking about your boss, Penny teased. The one whose name you mention at least 10 times during dinner. I do not, Fiona protested, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. Do too. Grandma noticed it too. Penny closed her textbook with a decisive thump. He sounds different from what you expected. Maybe not all rich people are jerks, Fiona sighed, remembering the photo of Dominic and his grandmother. Maybe some of them remember what it was like before they were rich. That night, after Penny and her grandmother had gone to bed, Fiona stood on their small balcony, looking out at the city lights. For so long, she had defined herself by the struggles she faced, by the responsibilities that anchored her. The idea that someone like Dominic might see beyond those circumstances to who she could be was both terrifying and exhilarating. As she turned to go inside, her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Dominic. Development team implemented your accessibility suggestions. User testing showed a 40% improvement. Your perspective matters here. See you tomorrow. Fiona smiled despite herself, realizing that perhaps the bridges between their worlds weren't as impossible to build as she had once believed. The truth revealed. The gala had been a revelation. Fiona had chosen a simple emerald dress, elegant but understated, using the company card Dominic had provided with strict instructions to find something that makes you feel confident. Throughout the evening, he had introduced her as my colleague who's revolutionizing our approach to user accessibility, never once treating her as subordinate or decorative. That had been 3 months ago. Now, as autumn painted Portland's trees, in fiery hues, Fiona found herself in a rhythm she hadn't thought possible. Her grandmother's condition had stabilized with the help of a specialist Dominic had happened to know. Penny was thriving in school, excited about college applications with a newfound confidence about their financial future. And Fiona herself had grown into her role at Vega Technologies, even leading a small team developing outreach programs for underserved communities. "You should bring Dominic to dinner sometime," her grandmother suggested one evening as Fiona chopped vegetables for soup. "I'd like to meet this young man who speaks so highly of you." Fiona nearly sliced her finger. "It's not like that, Grandma. We work together." Her grandmother's knowing smile spoke volumes. "And that's why you check your phone every 5 minutes when he texts?" Before Fiona could formulate a denial, Penny burst through the front door, waving an envelope. It came! The letter from Stanford! Time seemed to freeze as Penny tore open the envelope, her hands shaking. "I got in! Early admission with a full scholarship?" She looked up, confusion replacing her initial elation. "But I didn't apply for any scholarships yet." Fiona took the letter, scanning its contents with growing bewilderment. The Vega Foundation First Generation Scholar Program. Recipients selected based on academic excellence and demonstrated resilience. Full tuition, room, and board. "Vega? Isn't that your boss's company?" Penny asked, her excitement shifting to suspicion. "Did you do this?" "No," Fiona whispered, a cold realization washing over her. "I had no idea." That evening, after her family had gone to bed, Fiona sat at their small kitchen table with her laptop open, searching for information about the Vega Foundation. The scholarship program had been announced 3 months ago, right around the time of the gala. The selection committee was anonymous, but the foundation chair was listed as Dominic Vega. Her phone screen lit up with a text from Dominic. "Late meeting tomorrow canceled. Thought you'd want to know." Her fingers hovered over the screen before typing. "We need to talk, not at the office." His response came immediately. "Everything okay?" "No," she replied. "Coffee shop across from the park, 7 a.m. The next morning, Fiona arrived early, securing a corner table away from other patrons. When Dominic entered, his usual composed demeanor faltered at the sight of her expression. "What happened?" he asked, sitting across from her without bothering. "To order." Wordlessly, she slid Penny's acceptance letter across the table. Dominic glanced at it, then met her gaze steadily. "Congratulations to your sister. Stanford is an excellent school. Did you orchestrate this?" Fiona demanded, keeping her voice low despite her anger. Dominic sighed. "I didn't personally select the recipients, if that's what you're asking. The foundation has an independent committee, but you created the scholarship program right after meeting me. The timing is, admittedly, not coincidental." He leaned forward. "Fiona, meeting you reminded me of what I wanted this company to stand for. But Penny earned this on her own merit. Her application was exceptional." "How did she even apply?" "She never submitted anything to your foundation. The program partners with guidance counselors to identify candidates. They can nominate students directly." He paused. "I didn't know she was among the finalists until after the selections were made. I recused myself from the process precisely to avoid this situation." Fiona shook her head, unconvinced. "And my grandmother's specialist? The one who happened to have an opening?" Dominic had the grace to look slightly abashed. "That was more direct intervention, yes. But her case genuinely interested Dr. Harrison, and the results speak for themselves." "Why?" Fiona's voice cracked slightly. "Why go to these lengths for my family?" "Because I recognized something in you that reminded me of myself," he answered quietly. "That determination to carry everyone you love safely to shore, no matter how much it costs you personally." He hesitated. "And because somewhere along the way, your family's well-being started mattering to me, too." Fiona struggled to reconcile her gratitude with her sense of betrayal. "You should have told me. Would you have accepted the help if I had offered it directly?" Her silence was answer enough. I didn't intend to deceive you, Dominic continued. But I've learned that sometimes people who spend their lives taking care of others forget they deserve care too. He reached across the table, not quite touching her hand. Your sister earned that scholarship. Your grandmother deserves quality medical care, and you deserve not to shoulder these burdens alone. Fiona finally met his gaze. Do you know what it's like to wonder if everything good in your life came because someone else pulled strings? To question whether you could have succeeded on your own? Pain flashed across Dominic's features. Yes. After my grandmother died, a former client of hers paid for my final year of college. I nearly turned it down out of pride. His voice softened. That would have dishonored everything she sacrificed to get me that far. They sat in silence as the coffee shop filled with morning customers, the weight of unspoken feelings between them. I can't accept charity, Fiona finally said. Not even from you. Then don't. Dominic's expression grew more determined. Consider it an investment. When Penny graduates and changes the world, when your grandmother sees her great-grandchildren, when you achieve everything you're capable of, that's the return I'm looking for. Fiona stood, gathering her coat. I need time to think. Take all the time you need. Your job will be waiting. He remained seated as she turned to leave, adding, For what it's worth, in these past months, you've helped this company far more than I've helped your family. As Fiona walked through the autumn morning, leaves crunching beneath her feet, she felt caught between worlds, the one she had fought so hard to protect, and the one Dominic had shown was possible. The truth of his interventions had shaken her, yet she couldn't deny the genuine care behind his actions. Back at home, she found her grandmother awake early, knitting by the window. You look troubled, dear, she observed, setting aside her needles. How do you accept help without losing yourself? Fiona asked, sinking into the chair opposite. Her grandmother considered this. The same way you give help without diminishing others. With love and respect. She reached for Fiona's hand. Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is allow ourselves to be vulnerable enough to receive. As morning light filtered through the curtains, Fiona wondered if perhaps the bridges between her world and Dominic's were stronger than she had realized, and if the journey across might be worth the risk of falling. Beyond circumstances, the Portland winter had arrived with a vengeance, blanketing the city in snow that transformed its usual grayness into something magical. It had been 6 weeks since Fiona had discovered Dominic's involvement in her family's good fortune. 6 weeks of complicated emotions and careful distance. She hadn't quit her job. After much reflection, she'd returned to Vega Technologies the following Monday, throwing herself into work with renewed determination. Dominic had respected her need for professional boundaries, their interactions cordial, but restrained. The office had noticed the shift, but no one dared mention it. Today, as she finalized the quarterly report for the community outreach program she now directed, a gentle knock interrupted her concentration. Josephine from HR stood in her doorway. Fiona had earned her own office 3 weeks ago after a successful presentation to the board. Got a minute? Josephine asked, closing the door behind her. Of course. Is something wrong with the new hire paperwork? This isn't about work. Josephine settled into the chair across from Fiona's desk. It's about Dominic, Fiona tensed. I don't think... Just listen, Josephine interrupted gently. I've known Dominic for 8 years, since before Vega Technologies existed. Back when he was working out of a garage apartment, eating ramen to afford server costs. She leaned forward. Do you know why he started this company? Fiona shook her head slightly. His grandmother died waiting for medical treatment she couldn't afford. By the time a charity program approved her application, it was too late. Josephine's expression softened. Everything he's built, the foundation, the scholarship programs, even the healthcare initiatives, they all stem from that loss. Why? Are you telling me this? Fiona asked quietly. Because in 8 years, I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you when you're not watching. Josephine stood. And because he's stepping down as CEO. What? Fiona felt as though the floor had dropped from beneath her. The board meeting this afternoon. He's announcing his decision to focus exclusively on the foundation work. Josephine paused at the door. Sometimes people with means try to fix the world in ways they couldn't fix their own past. It doesn't make their help any less genuine. After Josephine left, Fiona sat motionless, her report forgotten. Through her office window, she could see snowflakes dancing past the glass, each one unique and temporary. Like opportunities, she thought. Present for a moment, then gone forever. Her phone buzzed with a text from Penny. Grandma's making her famous apple pie for Christmas Eve tomorrow. You're still bringing your friend from work, right? Fiona hadn't actually invited Dominic yet. After discovering his involvement with Penny's scholarship, she had withdrawn the dinner invitation her grandmother had suggested. Now, staring at her sister's message, she felt a clarity that had eluded her for weeks. The board meeting was scheduled for 4 p.m. Without giving herself time to reconsider, Fiona gathered her coat and scarf, heading toward the executive conference room on the top floor. She arrived just as the meeting was concluding, board members filing out with solemn expressions. Dominic remained inside, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the snow fall over the city. He looked tired in a way she hadn't noticed before. "Is it true?" she asked, closing the door behind her. He turned, surprise briefly registering before his expression settled into careful neutrality. "Josephine told you? Why would you step down? This company is your life's work." "The company was never the end goal, Fiona, just a means to create the foundation." He moved away from the window. "The board agrees it's time for new leadership to take Vega Technologies forward while I focus on expanding the foundation's reach. That's the official statement." "What's the real reason?" Dominic hesitated, then seemed to decide on honesty. "I built all of this trying to create the world my grandmother deserved to live in. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of how to actually live in that world myself." His gaze met hers directly. "Until I met you." Fiona felt her carefully constructed defenses beginning to crumble. "I've been unfair to you." "No. You've been exactly who you are, someone who stands on her own terms." The admiration in his voice was unmistakable. "That's what I've always respected most about you." "My grandmother wants you to come for Christmas Eve dinner tomorrow," she said, the invitation emerging differently than she'd planned. "She's making apple pie." A smile touched his lips. "I'd be honored." "It won't be what you're used to. Our apartment is small and we do simple gifts and—" "Fiona," he interrupted gently. "The last Christmas I spent with my grandmother. We had canned soup and store-bought cookies in a one-bedroom apartment with a plastic tree. It was perfect." The following evening, as snow continued to fall outside, Dominic arrived at Fiona's apartment building carrying a modest bouquet of winter flowers and a canvas bag of carefully wrapped packages. She met him in the lobby, suddenly shy in a way she hadn't been even during the foundation gala. "You found the place okay?" she asked, reaching to help with his coat. "Your directions were excellent." His smile was warm, genuine in a way that business Dominic rarely allowed. In jeans and a simple sweater, he looked younger, more approachable. Upstairs, Penny opened the door before they could knock. "You must be Dominic. I'm Penny. Fiona talks about you constantly." "She exaggerates," Fiona cut in, feeling her cheeks warm as she ushered Dominic inside. Their small apartment had been transformed by Penny's enthusiastic decorating. A modest tree glowed in the corner, paper snowflakes hung from the ceiling, and candles flickered on every available surface. The aroma of apple pie and roasting chicken filled the space. Fiona's grandmother emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a worn apron. "Welcome to our home, young man. I'm Eleanor." "Thank you for having me, Mrs. Walsh," Dominic presented, the flowers with a respectful nod. "Your granddaughters speak of you with such admiration. Call me Eleanor, please." She accepted the flowers with a knowing smile. "And we'll see if you still admire my cooking after dinner." The evening unfolded with a naturalness that surprised Fiona. Dominic fit into their small family gathering, as if he'd always belonged there, helping Eleanor with serving, engaging Penny in conversation about her college plans, and offering sincere compliments on their modest home. "This reminds me so much of holidays with my own grandmother," he confided to Fiona as they washed dishes together after dinner. "She would have loved your family." Later, as they exchanged gifts, Dominic's selections revealed how closely he had been paying attention. For Eleanor, a rare first edition of her favorite poetry collection. For Penny, a vintage calculator that had belonged to a female mathematician who had worked on early space programs. And for Fiona, a small wooden box that contained a delicate compass. "Because you've always known your true north," he explained quietly as she examined it, even when the path wasn't clear. After Penny had excused herself to call friends and Eleanor had retired to her room, Fiona and Dominic found themselves alone by the tree, snowflakes still dancing outside the window. "Thank you for tonight," he said, his voice low. "This is the first Christmas in years that's felt real. I've been thinking about what you said, about investing rather than charity." Fiona turned to face him fully. "I'm starting a mentorship program through Vega for girls from backgrounds like mine and Penny's. I'd like the foundation support, but I want to build it myself." His expression brightened with genuine interest. "I think that's brilliant. And I have a counter-proposal regarding your resignation." She took a deep breath. "Don't step down completely. The company needs your vision. But maybe there's a middle path, one where you can focus more on the foundation while maintaining connection to Vega technologies." "A middle path," he repeated, thoughtfully. "I like that metaphor. I've spent my life believing people from your world and mine couldn't truly understand each other," Fiona admitted. "That wealth and privilege created an uncrossable distance." "And now?" Dominic asked, his gaze holding hers. "Now I think perhaps the distance was never about circumstances at all, but about whether two people are willing to meet each other halfway." She hesitated, then added, "To build bridges instead of walls." Dominic reached for her hand, his touch, gentle but certain. "I'm very good at building things that last." Outside, the snow continued to fall, each flake finding its unique path to earth. Inside, warmth bloomed between two people who had discovered that the greatest journey is the one that leads us beyond the circumstances of our past into the possibility of what we might become together. As midnight approached, Dominic reluctantly prepared to leave. At the door, he paused, snow gathering on his shoulders as he stood on the threshold between her world and his, worlds that somehow seemed less separate than they had only hours before. "Merry Christmas, Fiona," he said softly. "Merry Christmas, Dominic," she replied. And as she closed the distance between them, she realized that sometimes the bravest act isn't standing alone, but reaching out to connect across the spaces that divide us. In that moment, with the gentle press of her lips against his, Fiona understood that love doesn't erase the differences between people. It honors them, creating something stronger and more beautiful than either could build alone. And in that creation lies the true miracle, that two people from different worlds can find in each other a home they never expected but somehow always needed.